Hello. Oh my. So I was over at my couch thinking what a wonderful rainy day it was. And someone texted me and said, aren't you doing your pastor's chat today? And I said, sure. Anyway, sorry I'm late. So it's 2:15, not 2 o'clock, and I am happy to be here with you right now. This is a day that makes for flowers, right? They say the rain, think about it, it brings the good stuff. So I hope you're doing okay today. It's Saturday. Another day of lockdown, lock up, however, whatever it feels like for you. So this day, in terms of a chat for information related to the church, for those of you that are part of the church, I've just completed our first online streaming session meeting, and we're happy to be together this morning at 10 o'clock for about 2 hours to discuss and work on the issues related to the church. We did officially cancel the congregational meeting for tomorrow, which I'm sure you were expecting. And we also officially made some decisions. We have made a commitment to support and pay our staff for a period of 30 days so that we can keep this awesome team that we have together and also support everybody in what they're doing. We operate regularly now with a very thin line of cash reserve, but in some ways that keeps us honest in terms of our faith. And we have right now enough money in the cash reserves to be able to, in the cash supply, to be able to pay salaries for another 30 days. All of that, of course, depends upon and hopes for your regular support coming in, and we believe that we have it. So, there's some good news, some exciting news about things that we're going to continue to do. We are going to tomorrow, maybe, but for sure next Sunday, be doing something in worship related to children. So we're happy to do that. We are piecing together more parts of our regular worship service. Veronica and Allie will be featured tomorrow in the worship service remotely, and we're excited about that. There's also some new information to be gathered up in this wall of prayer. I have not yet constructed the wall of prayer. I haven't had time to do that, but we are putting together the prayer wall. I have now 5 or 6 requests for prayer. I'm putting them on little yellow post-it notes, and I'm going to fold them and put them on a wall right out here in the hallway, and then I'll have a way of showing them as I begin the chats, and then we're going to use those prayers also for a conversation time of prayers in the worship service tomorrow. So that's really exciting to me. I can't tell you how amazing it is to see the opportunity for connection that is built into our life that we never needed to discover. We never needed to find it out because we had other alternatives. It reminds me of the amazing thing. I've always been amazed by this anyway, that people who work with the human body, and especially amazing as they are with doctors who do brain work and brain surgery, and I don't know much about this. I know just enough to get it wrong, But you know, the body is fed by a very complex system of arteries and veins, and it makes just coming and going traffic for blood, and blood is of course essential for the life of the body. And when for example in the heart area one of the passageways is removed or is blocked, the body has the ability to grow new roots. It has the ability to grow new connections. And I think that's just amazing, but then how much more exciting is it that it's not just a physical reality of the body, the infinite complexity and creativity of the body to sustain life itself. In the brain, passageways for even the neurons and the electrical passageways for the map of the brain. When one part is injured, the brain and the body have the ability to create alternative routes. Now, it doesn't always happen. Don't mishear me. Certainly there are lots of things that can happen that cause a body to die or to lose a function, and tragic. That's tragic. But along with that, there is this built-in capacity, isn't there, for life itself to surge forward. And I just have never experienced it in the area that it's happening in my life today. Partly, I think, I don't know all of what to attribute it to. Our session meeting today, I know the others who were part of it, using the technology, was a wonderful celebration of community. We had better cooperation with each other. We had great efficiency. That the meeting did not go on for a long time, and we accomplished a lot today. And I came out of it with a feeling of, wow, I didn't even know we could do that like that. I learned, and I hope that we're going to be able to follow up on this. I learned that a church that I'm helping out is planning for a cyber Sunday school class. And there's a possibility that this week coming up we might have small groups of people who can meet together and check in with each other, and not for a long time necessarily, but social groups that would meet and say, hey, how are you? And I've never met you before, and we might see that also, that pathway emerging for a community to be bursting out in new ways. A miracle. It's just a miracle. And I say that today. Life is not either or. It's both and. Because at the same time we're experiencing, and I'm experiencing in particular, all those new ways of community. One of the leaders of the session said that in the work world where he is, they're no longer calling it social distancing. They're just calling it physical distancing. To engage in physical distancing because we are still socializing. We're socializing in ways we never did before. We're sharing with each other. We're talking about things we've never talked about before. I've been watching on my social media people who are bored, I guess, at home, and they're confessing to some realities about their life. Some of them ring true to mine, like, how many times have I said, I wish that I had a week. I just wish that I had a whole week of nothing else to do. And then there's so much that I would get accomplished. And then, of course, in a true spirit of confession, this person on social media was saying, and here I am at the end of a whole week, and I didn't get any of that done. So evidently, the thing that I thought was an obstacle to getting that done wasn't the obstacle at all. There's other things that are part of us that keep us sometimes from having the organized lives we think we can have and do that. And so much to learn. At the same time, the reality of what's happening in the world around me is not lost on me. These new ways of being together are created because of the incredible advance of this disease, of this virus in our society, and the incredible burden that is being placed on government officials operating in disaster, operating in crisis, putting into practice things that they've only rehearsed in theory. Medical supplies and emergency management people whose careers are designed to go into action in the event of, and they never really knew whether their practices and skills that they were going to need would ever take place. They didn't know. Hospitals often run drills for what would happen if there was an incredible demand for a hospital of 19 beds in the emergency room. What would happen if they received 50 people who needed emergency room service or critical care service? They practice these drills. But oftentimes they practice them never believing that in their lifetime they would see the magnitude of pressure that is being applied to these healthcare workers, emergency management people, people that are trying to do logistics for food and all the different parts of what makes a society operate. We're human beings and we know that we need to be prepared. But we always prepare with the hope that we'll never have to put them into practice. Our civil servants are putting into practice things that they have been prayerfully rehearsing, hoping they would never have to do. Wow, what a time. What a time it is. Is this then the more of the meaning of Lent, of what Lent points to? Is that we need to be prepared, holding on in hope for the things that we have, but also holding on in faith for the things that we might not have, or for the challenges that we will face. Always having the full spectrum of those in our quiver of arrows that we use to cope in life. I know that for me, I don't really know this phrase that well, but I know in submarine life they do what they call sounding the bottom, and that is they send a ping or an echo wave down to make sure they know where the bottom of the ocean floor is so they don't run into it. And I feel like during this time we're sounding the bottom. We're banging off sounds from the bottom to say, okay, what if we have to go that deep? What if this number of people become infected, or this number of people are so sick that they die? Wow. This is the journey of life. This is it. We've always known its uncertainties. We've always known its insecurities. We've always lived with some low-level knowledge of it's fragile, how fragile we are. Steve often in our longest night service will play and sing beautifully that song, Fragile. How fragile we are. And that makes us beautiful. That makes us like the tender bloom on a flower. But it also is real. The fragileness of life is real. So let us continue to be full of compassion and patience to one another, for those of you who, again, are involved in whatever element of our social response. I pray that you will be finding new artery paths and new connections growing. I hope that in your experience in home, that your relationships to each other are growing new pathways, and that your relationships to those that you can't see are finding new routes for connecting. Because in human life, we are infinitely capable of that. Infinitely capable of it. On the farm, we used to do a lot of digging for fence posts and digging for drainage ditches and all kinds of things. And one of my favorite things in that digging experience was to come across, as we were digging, to discover in the experience of digging in the ground, we would discover a root of a tree. A root of a tree that had, in its tender little journey, had arrived at a massive rock. And that rock, impenetrable to that tender little root, that root would find its way up and around. And sometimes it would grow up and around and then close on the other side of the rock so tight that the rock and the root became part of each other. So creative is the pulse of God and the energy of God and of life, the drive for life. I pray that energy and that strength for you today. In your prayer life, in your relationships at home, in your relationships with the people that you miss. All of those experiences. Thank God for those who are in service in helping to keep the pathways open that we have always used, and those who are working to invent new ways for us to be creatures of love and care and compassion. Thank you for being here and for sharing in this time of conversation. I'm honored to be your pastor. I'm thrilled more than ever to be here in the new arteries and in the new pathways, in the pathway of new growth that is happening, even while we continue to be full of prayer and hope and strength, especially for those who've contracted this virus in a way that is threatening their life. We pray for our leaders at the national and state and local levels, and pray that through it all, the incredible energy that is required will be sufficient to see to our welfare, all of us. I'd like to pray. I hope that you would join with me. Oh God, we thank you that in the words of creation, that your words that brought light and darkness and separated them, and the water and the land, and then all the living beings, including human beings, out of the earth, that in that word that created us, it was not a static word. It didn't just create and then stop, but that it created and is creating. It's creating in us new opportunities for hope. Yes, we know that death lurks always at the door in our lives. We've learned to live at some level of knowing that. We know that disease and virus always threaten to undo us. But we are grateful that in your plan for life, not just for us, but for the creatures of the earth and for the systems of the earth itself, there seems to be this incredible energy for creating and being creative. And we hear that in the word that created us and the word that continues to call us. So call us, O God. Let us hear your voice. Remind us that you're with us, walking with us, and invite us to see and find new ways. Sometimes life requires that we learn to walk in the dark. It doesn't mean that we get a bright light shining, but that we learn that we do have night vision, and that sometimes that night vision can be very clear. So I pray for that kind of vision, that kind of creativity, that kind of work to be done in us and through us as we journey through today and tomorrow, as we gather in all the different ways that we do to join in the songs and words and promises of how great you are and how wonderful this life is and how much our hearts are called to share in the greatest gifts of life, of forgiveness and compassion and hope and caring one to another. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for joining me today. It's Saturday, and so tomorrow we'll be in worship. I'll be doing the education class at 9:30. We'll be talking about, strangely enough, what does it mean for churches to be creating safe communities? And we'll think a little bit about that, and then we'll have worship at 10:30, and with a children's story in the middle of it. God bless you, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.